I want to talk to you today about three different subjects, but they're all kind of combined together, and they all relate to our dental practice. And we've heard this whole idea of wow, and there's a good wow and there's a bad wow. So that's the concept number one. The second thing that I want to talk about is being distinctly and decidedly different. And the third concept, and probably the most important concept, in order to create those two things, is doing more than what your patients expect. And not only doing more than what your patients expect, because the wow factor being decidedly and distinctly different also applies to the people that work for us and the people that help our practice maintain itself and certainly grow. So let's talk about the wow. Let's talk about that first, because that's really the easiest concept. So there's a good wow and there's a bad wow. And what I mean by that is, why do you pick the restaurant you like to go to on a Friday night? Or why do you pick the place you like to go to for lunch? Or why do you pick the gas station? Or why do you pick the store that you buy your groceries in? It has to do with wow. And a lot of times, when we think about wow, we think it's going to be a really big wow. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a really big wow. Sometimes it can be a series of small wows that say, I just like going there. So let's talk about a restaurant. If I can go to a restaurant and the hostess and the waiter and the waitress and the wait staff, busboys and everybody know me and they make me feel welcome there, I like going there because collectively they give me a series of small wows which add up to a really big wow. So just imagine the opposite of that when you go to a restaurant and you're treated disrespectfully, or they take somebody before you even though you were in line ahead of them. Those series of wows create a bad wow to the point where you decide not to go back there. The same thing happens inside your dental office. If a new patient walks into your reception area and the front desk or the administrative assistant doesn't greet that patient and expect that patient to be there, there's automatically a small but a very significant bad wow. So just imagine greeting a new patient coming into your reception area. If the door comes open and it's 9 o'clock in the morning and you know that Mrs. Smith is your 9 o'clock new patient, wouldn't it be so much nicer if the admin who's going to greet this patient says, "Good morning, Mrs. Smith, I think you're our new patient. We're excited to have you here." That's a good wow. Imagine the opposite to that, which is Mrs. Smith walks into the door, she goes to the front desk, she looks at the lady behind the front desk, and the lady looks up at her and she gives her one of these fingers like, "I'm busy right now, just hold on a second." And then she says, "Here's a form, fill this out, have a seat, I'll call you in a few moments." No acknowledgement of who the woman is, no welcome into the practice for, at being a new patient. So you can see really very quickly that's the difference between being a good wow and a bad wow. So the other concept is being decidedly and distinctly different. And it kind of coincides or parallels the whole wow concept. So be decidedly distinctly different, which is, what are you doing in your practice to make yourself decidedly and distinctly different? Because if you're not doing that in every interaction with your patients, whether they're new patients or existing patients, you're either creating good wows or bad wows. And those two things together are going to make a difference in the bottom line at the end of the day. Because if you create a series of bad wows, if you create a series of events that make you decidedly distinctly different, but in a negative way, patients are going to start to leave your practice. So how do you create good wows and how do you make yourself decidedly distinctly different? Well, it's really simple. Let's talk about doing more than is expected. So if a new patient calls up on the phone and my admin, who's really, really good about everything, is as sweet as can be on the phone and says, "We're looking forward to seeing Monday at 9 o'clock in the morning," that's great. But imagine the conversation if the admin now says, "Let me give you the address." So that's like a nice thing. And you're like, okay, well, that's kind of expected, but okay. But just imagine now if the admin goes, "Well, where do you live?" And the patient, this new patient, says, "Well, I live in this particular neighborhood or this particular section of the city." And now the admin says, "Okay, let me do this for you. I know about where you're at, and let me tell you how it's going to be the easiest and fastest way for you to get from your home to our office. Because I don't want you to go over a particular bridge, because sometimes the bridge is up, like boats go by. I don't want you to go to a particular railroad crossing, because that railroad crossing is kind of a long, drawn-out railroad crossing. Or maybe there's just faster little shortcuts that we can use to get to that office." So now you've actually scripted out how the patient's going to go from their home to your office. You're doing more than what is expected. And imagine this. So now you've got a new patient. You know they're going to be there at 9 o'clock. You go to Mrs. Smith and say, "Mrs. Smith, let me give you a couple of options. You can come in at 9 o'clock and I'm going to give you some paperwork that needs to be filled out, health history, HIPAA forms, financial responsibility forms, all that kind of stuff. Or what if I were to email it to you? And if we hear any hesitation in your voice and you say, Mrs. Smith, if you're not comfortable receiving emails, What if I mail you those forms so you can fill them out ahead of time? You can take your time at home. So when you come in, you and the doctor will be ready to kind of meet each other. We can kind of talk about how we can make your overall dental health better. So you can start to see that we've created a couple of different scenarios there. We have a new patient. We want to make ourselves decidedly distinctly different. We want that new patient to go, wow, and how do we do that? By doing something that's above and beyond what the patient is expecting. Whether it's emailing medical history forms to the patient, snail mailing those medical history forms to the patient, or giving them the option to where they have a choice between 1, 2, or if they prefer, we're more than happy to have those forms available to you when you get to the office. So that's making yourself decidedly distinctly different by doing things more than what the patient is expecting and making the patients go, wow. What about when they check out? So right now there's usually a handoff from the doctor to the dental assistant, from the dental assistant to the admin at the front. And now we have to start talking about payment and getting this patient excited about paying for the dentistry that they just had. When the dental assistant hands off the patient to the admin, who could be collecting the money for that day, there's two different ways to do this. The admin can just bring the patient to the front, here's the chart, or we put the records in the computer, and the person just walks away. So that's not really a great wow. You haven't made yourself decidedly distinctly different, or if you have, you've done it in a negative way. You haven't done more than what the patient is expecting. So just imagine the handoff this way. The dental assistant now goes to the front desk. We did an OD 3-service composite on Mrs. Smith. Unbelievable the way it works. We took out our old, ugly mercury silver filling. We replaced it with this beautiful new white color filling. She looks great. We removed all the decay. We know that she's healthier now than she was when she first came in an hour ago. Just love the way this looks. We took intraoral photographs in the back. I sent the file to the front there. I think they're printed on the color printer right now. If you can just grab those things so we can kind of look at it, and let's just look at it and just admire what this doctor has done. The doctor's taken a very unhealthy situation and created health for that patient in less than an hour. So now there's like a certain amount of enthusiasm and excitement for what the doctor did for this patient. And it all started with the handoff from the dental assistant to the admin. The way the admin responds to the dental assistant's enthusiasm is the next place to create a good wow or a bad wow. So now if the admin says, okay, whatever, just give me the chart, I got a lot of stuff to do, Mrs. Jones, you'll be $300. That's a bad wow. But now if the handoff from the dental assistant to the admin is responded by from the admin, which is, this is amazing. This doctor did an amazing job for your tooth. It was so unhealthy, and now he's created health inside your mouth, and he was able to do this in less than an hour. Mrs. Smith, did he hurt you? No, I didn't feel a thing. Unbelievable. We have the best doctor in town. And by the way, Mrs. Smith, we do have to kind of collect. I printed out this picture. I'd love for you to show your family and friends the kind of care that you received in this dental office. And how do you want to pay for that today? Credit card or check? And that's it. So what we've done now is we've made ourselves decidedly distinctly different. We've done more than what the patient is expecting. And by doing those two simple things, we've created this good wow. Maybe not this tremendous wow, but we've created a bunch of series of small wows that when added up together creates this tremendous wow for the patient. And that's exactly what we want to do every single time we interact with the patient. We want to make sure that we're decidedly distinctly different. We're doing more than what the patient is expecting so we can create this good wow. And if you don't believe I'm correct, think about your own buying decisions. Why do you go to the gas station you go to? Is it all price motivated? Typically not. Why do you go to the certain restaurants that you love to go to? Is it price motivated? No, it's probably the quality of food, or the taste of the food, and the way the wait staff treats you and welcomes you to their home. You want to create that same good wow. So all the things that make you go wow in a very positive way, you want to understand that and create that electricity and that excitement when you start to interact with your patients. So what are you going to do? You're going to create good wow. You're going to make sure that every interaction you have with patients is decidedly distinctly different, and you're going to do more than what the patient is expecting, because that's how you create a tremendous wow.